way, you're ready for it. And that's what I want for you, and I want to help you with that. So go to chrisnaugle.com and sign up for the Wealth webinar. We do them every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and you need to be there because it's time.
For over 90 years, we've been crash testing our cars in the tireless pursuit of automotive safety. At Volvo, safety's been first since 1927. We've saved millions of lives with the invention of the three-point seatbelt in 1959. At Volvo, we've made driving safer for you and them. Visit safety.finleyvolvo.com to learn more.
So they say if you give a man a gun, he'll rob a bank. But if you give a man a bank, he'll rob everybody. But the good news for you is Private Money Club runs solely on peer-to-peer relationships, which means no banks allowed. So finally, there's a community for real estate entrepreneurs where it is truly a win-win solution. This community is a place where you can connect with other lenders and other borrowers, and the end result's massive growth for you. You get to build your real estate empire, and you get to do it solving other people's problems. So if that sounds like a place you want to be, well then join us. Go to privatemoneyclub.com/Kelly. And if you want $500 off, just add the code Kelly500 and I'll knock $500 off the Premier membership. We'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to the Kelly Cardenas podcast, where attitude is everything. I want to thank every single person out there that's been rocking with us and listening to us and helping us to get in the top 1% globally. Also, I want to thank Mr. Jim DiGiulio with Finley Volvo Cars of Las Vegas. He's been a sponsor of the podcast, but also he's just been a friend of our family and showed me what the difference between transaction and relationship is, and why it's so important to be able to have relationships in your life that will bring, a vast amount of ROI. Also with Mr. Chris Naugle, you know who you are. Chris Naugle is changing the game as far as the financial side, helping people to become their own banks. So check them out. I want to thank every one of you out there that's been rocking with the podcast. And it's a special episode today. Not only am I wearing a hat that is not Kansas City in my head. It's for my own name. That's the only reason why I'm wearing it. I wouldn't support Kansas City. I wouldn't support the Chiefs. And any of my Chiefs fans out there, you know where the Oilers are at. You can come get some. On today's show, I've been so excited because, again, special episode for me. It's actually my 48th birthday today, and I get to spend it with a guy who builds people. This man gives rocket fuel. Not only that's the name of his book, but also he gives rocket fuel to every single person around him. When you get a chance to spend time with him, he's not trying to beat his chest and tell you all the things he does about that he does. He's just trying to ask you about you and then how he can grow you, how he can help you to be able to build your personal brand, grow your personal brand. He's the founder of That One, and you're going to understand why That One is so important. And this man is helping people to become that one. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. It's so funny that you said beating your chest because I have a hat on with a gorilla on the top. I wonder if that was like a subliminal thing that came into your mind when you saw the gorilla. But I like the gorilla because I really feel like that when I'm in the gym. I feel strong like that, But I definitely don't beat my chest when running my mouth, So I appreciate that you noticed that, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much. I just want to express gratitude to you.
Well, I think it's incredible, man. I want to go right to that point. When we met through Greg Reed. Greg Reed, if you haven't got a chance to go to Secret Knock or to Prosperity Camp, honestly, you're missing out, and your life is going to be there's levels, right? And so when you go to Prosperity Camp, you go to Secret Knock, I mean, literally your level will change immediately when you get in the room. But we were at Prosperity Camp, and I don't know if you remember this, but we were in the kitchen, and we came in and doing what you do, which we're going to get into, but you had every right to be like, yo, I'm C-Roc, I got this, I got that. And it wasn't. You simply asked me questions about me. You looked me in my eye, and it was as if everybody else didn't exist in the room, and you were just giving me that attention. How have you been able to work on that and stay authentic at the heights that you've been able to roll?
Oh man, great question. So, I always loved when I heard somebody talking about a president or Oprah or somebody, and they said, man, they're just present. Like that, you're the most important thing to them, right? When you're with them, and how they made you feel. And, my mission that I identify with and I use to filter my thoughts, words, actions, and my environment through is that all people are unstoppable to living the life of their dreams. When people are done with me, I want, like, if they're in my environment, I want them to feel elevated. I want them to leave my environment feeling unstoppable. And so, I just started paying attention to those things, and I never felt good when I just worried about myself. It never felt good. And so for me, it's really fulfilling to pour into people, and in order to pour into people and help people, you need to know about them. You need to learn about them, what matters to them. What are they working on now that's got them excited? What are they looking at towards the future? And that for me has been the game changer, because I can actually cause and create futures for people with them. Obviously, they got to do the work too. And that's one of the most attractive things that I've ever experienced.
What about the paradigm shifts, right? So we have the tendency in life to, say we're going one way and then something hits, or something specifically. Most of the time I get knocked in the head. I get either kicked in the face, kicked in the head, kicked in the neck, stomped on the head while I'm down. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I learned that lesson, and now I'm going to go a different way. Or was it just that C-Roc was always in this, I'm giving, I've got gratitude, I've got all these things? Or was there a paradigm shift? And if there was, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I think I was chasing money for the longest time, over relationship, over lining myself with the right people that vibed with my mission, which, I don't even think, Kelly, I had a mission before the paradigm shift. I was more focused, like, how can I get making money, to the highest level, and just keep more and more and more and more. And I would come home miserable. I'd come home with less patience for my family, which is just unacceptable to me. And I didn't know why I was like that. I didn't know why I was feeling like this anxiety, this lack of patience for my family, and putting everything else ahead of them in a way, even though I thought I was doing it for them. If that makes sense.
Well, and I think a lot of times as hard charging entrepreneurs, we have the tendency to tell ourselves that lie. Oh, I'm doing this and I'm away from my family and they're not getting me, but I'm doing it for them. And my brother helped me to realize one day, he was like, no, Kel, you're doing it for you. Like, if you were doing it truly for your family, you would be more efficient, you would spend more time at home, and you would find a way to do less work and bring more of a result to people. And then that way you could spend time with them. But you're lying to yourself every time that you're saying, I'm working 35 days in a row, 24 hours a day, and it's for my family. And so let's go back to young Mikey, because there was a time where Mikey was not C-Roc yet. We'll go to the C-Roc part, but let's go to young Mikey. What things around you kind of shaped that mentality, or shaped the things that you saw, or the things that you chased after early on?
Well, before I go to that, I just want to say what a great job you did at Secret Knock, by the way. I don't mean to get off topic, but I wanted to say this earlier, and we got lost track of it. But you emceed Secret Knock this past year, 2023, and I just thought you did a phenomenal job. The energy you brought was great, and I just I was watching you, just admiring, and so I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you that you had that opportunity, and you did a great job with it.
Thank you. Let me ask you this. I want to ask go into that question. Is what difference did you see? Like, when you were saying that, and I appreciate it and I accept it. It really means a lot to me, especially coming from you. But what differences did you see, and what things did you see that kind of stood out to you?
So, I love, by the way, I love everyone else that's done it. Shout out to Charles and everybody. And it was just phenomenal. But to me, it was, there's a lot of things that go into it. It could be the environment, right? It could be the environment. It could be just a change of pace. But I think that, and again, I don't want to say this and take anything away from anyone else, right? No. I think that just the passion and energy and authentic passion and energy was like on show. You could feel it from you, and I appreciate that. I'm not one to sugarcoat things myself when I'm talking. I be myself. I'm authentic, and if people don't like it, they don't like it. And I just noticed that authenticity, and I can really relate to that. So I think that's the main thing that I noticed. And you weren't afraid to go off script, and you were having, like, you were conversing with people rather than just talking at them.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. And that's one of the big things that I loved, because I see the persona of, and I'm not saying that it's a persona like you're one person and another, but I see the brand of C-Roc, and I see that part of it. But for those of you who get a chance to hear his genius and see him, whether it be social media or his website, or you get a chance to work with him, I want you to know that the Mike behind those things is the guy, like, it's a true human being that will stop when no one's watching. And you stopped when no one was watching, man, at Prosperity Camp. And I mean, you didn't have to talk to me, and you took the time with me. And I just want to compliment you, man, because there's very few people, because a lot of times you'll find where you'll see someone from a distance, you'll love them, and then you get up close and you're like, I would like to stay at a distance. And so I want to compliment you on that. Let's go back to young Mike before C-Roc happened, right? Because there's stages in life. What were some of those influences that really impacted you early? Did they call you Mikey back in the day? They call you Michael? They call you Mike?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
one?
No, they called me Mikey.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go back to little Mikey. What was little Mikey watching, learning, and picking up on?
Yeah, so I don't remember my parents ever being together. So I always thought it was ordinary. It's weird. Like, I just had a podcast earlier. A guy was on my show and he's like, when you're young, you just normalize things, trauma, you normalize things that you're going through. I don't remember my parents ever together. And I did the every other weekend thing with my dad and all that. And it was normal to me. My mom and I were together until I was about 5. My sister was born. And we moved around, lived in little tiny apartments. I went to the daycare and all that stuff. But one thing growing up, I noticed as I was growing up, there was a lot of brokenness around me. My grandmother, my uncles, my dad and his wife, and my mom had her issues, and there's just a lot of brokenness, anxiety, depression, fighting, a lot of violence, like just not calmness, right? But one thing I noticed, because I would always I was the type of kid that would always try to get on the right side of people. Even though they might be fighting with someone else, I always try to smooth it over and be on a good side with it. And some people I just couldn't figure out. But I noticed something over and over again is that people would tell themselves a story of why they were like that the way they were. And then they would live out that story. And I used to not be afraid to call them out on their BS. Even at a young age, like 8 years old, 9 years old, I would tell them like, hey, that's only true because you're saying it's true. And that's why you're getting these results. And they would get mad sometimes, or they would resent me or just brush me off. And I also noticed that they sometimes, when they resented me, they wouldn't want to be around me when I'm talking like that because it made them feel uncomfortable, even though it's true. And you realize at a young age that whatever you tell yourself, whatever story you tell yourself is what you're going to live. You're going to cause and create your future. And I started telling myself of what I was going to do and why I was going to do it. And I couldn't do the other thing because I had to make sure I wasn't like them, broken. I love everybody. I'm a guy that loves people. I love everybody. I don't have to like what they do. I don't have to like what they say, but I love all people. And I understand that there's a human being and then there's layers that are poured on top of them from the experiences and the bashings that they've taken in life. And it just encases you. So I understand underneath that, all of that is a human being. And growing up and all that stuff, I just realized that I didn't want to have that problem. I didn't want to be in that. But Kelly, my life wasn't always perfect though. I did have moments where I partied my butt off in college and got to dark spots, and because I got off track and off that mission. But what I've noticed is that I didn't want to be the person that was living out a story that I was telling myself, which wasn't the life I wanted to live.
Mike, tell us about the dark spots, because I think I just had a guy come into our men's group. We do a men's group on Tuesday from 7:30 to 8:30 every single week here in Carlsbad. If you're ever in Carlsbad and you're listening, you want to come to the baddest men's group on the planet from 7:30 to 8:30. I mean, it is powerful. Dude just came in and we got a chance to be able to talk, and it was his first time, and he sat down and he talked about some really, really hard things that he was dealing with, but he went to that place immediately, and it was unbelievable. I mean, guys getting vulnerable is crazy, but most of the time people say a dark spot and then they just move on. But there's a lot of people out there that are listening that are like, man, I'm in a dark spot too. But I have the tendency to glaze over it because no one sits in it for a second. What were some of the dark spots that you went through during that time, as you were going through?
Yeah. So I came home from college one day, and I had a stepfather. His name was George. He passed away in 2019 of a sudden heart attack. He was a great guy, man, just black and white kind of guy. And he didn't know how to buffer information when it was a bad news he was delivering kind of thing, and I came home and I walked in the door. Now, my grandmother, for the longest time, my mom's mother, my maternal grandmother, she's been fighting anxiety, depression. She was on prescription medication, a lot of times overprescribed, would overdose around the holidays. There would always be some kind of issue around the holidays. And sometimes we'd go to visit her and she wouldn't answer the door. She'd stay in her room. And, I'm a relentless cat, man. I would go over to the back door where the window was near her room and bang on that. Hey, you're letting us in. Get your ass up. I would do that kind of stuff. and, but one day she succumbed to her addiction. She overdosed. And I walked in the house and George said, Mike, your grandmother killed herself. Just like that, like his deep voice he had. Mike, your grandmother killed herself. And I felt like I wasn't expecting it. I was totally caught off guard. A ton of bricks. It was like the weight just fell on me, and I fell to the ground. I'm like, holy cow! And I didn't even know that I was falling. I just felt like this weight, and I couldn't even help myself. I just caved onto the ground. And I realized that because I was always trying to help my grandmother, I realized that I failed. I felt like I failed, even though I was away at college. And when you have that feeling of failure, you make a decision right after failure. You're like, I'm no good at this. I'm no good at helping people. Or you say, I'm a failure. Or you say everybody after a failure or setback makes a decision right after that generally will shape the rest of their life. But it's generally around not being good at that thing or whatever you failed at. It doesn't work, so to speak. And what happens a lot of times too is there's a thing called dead man's goals, where somebody in your life that's important to you, when they pass away, you pick up their you pick up their life. You pick up their continuous the continuous of their goals, what they want to accomplish. And my grandmother was a lady that just didn't take crap from anybody. I remember her getting in fights at Little League baseball games and stuff with other parents, just like crazy. Old lady fighting. Like, come on, man, what is that? But she just didn't give a crap. And if somebody said something to her, she was going to let them have it, right? And when I just remember this, and as you were talking about this, I just remember this, like I felt this transference of her mission to not take crap from anyone to me. When that happened, I got this feeling like, you know what? I'm not taking crap from anybody. I'm not taking crap. Somebody says something, I'm handling it. I'm going to be the enforcer. And I started watching movies at that time. That's when like Goodfellas was out and Casino and all these movies. And I felt like, man, like Joe Pesci, the way Joe Pesci acted. And so I started getting into this phase where I didn't care. Like, I got this. I'm gonna be the enforcer, and then I'm gonna party. I'm gonna live the life I want to live. Like YOLO, you only live once, as they used to say back like a few years ago. Like just going all out. And when I did that, it felt good at one point. By the way, I didn't drink alcohol until college or after I graduated high school in my like senior summer, right? Never drank alcohol. Was an athlete. Played for college football actually. Never partied. But when all that happened and then I went back to college and I saw these girls for the first time, like lots of girls, I thought with all that piling up that this is what you're supposed to do. What have I been missing out on? No cares in the world, right? And it was all fun at first. Drinking led to me not being effective on the football field. It led to me looking into other things, like because the alcohol eventually wears off as far as the effect of it, then you're looking, okay, what's next? Oh, the marijuana, man, I can't imagine smoking marijuana. Even me, I was like, there's no way, even though it's legal now and it's more acceptable now. Back then it wasn't. And I'm like, there's no way. And then I tried it and then I'm like, oh, this is cool. What have I been missing? Then over a while, now I'm drinking marijuana, chasing women, partying. And then the next thing it led down to was, okay, what's next? Now in life, everybody, if you have a future in front of you, you're always like, what's next? What's next? Once you knock something down or accomplish something, you're like, what's next? What's next? Well, when you're on the wrong track and it's drugs and alcohol and partying, you're like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Then the next thing came and it's cocaine, and then it's, mushrooms, and then it's ecstasy. And then I'm like, man, this is like the feeling of it's great, but when you come down, it sucks. And then it never feels the same as the first time. And so I got to a place where it started getting dark and all I cared about was the party. Where's the next party? Work was just a way to get to the next party. And I was never, ever could see myself like that. Ever, ever, ever. But I picked up the life continuum of my grandmother. And when I did that, I get to the point where my friends started going home after college, and they started going home and getting jobs and starting families and all this. And I was stuck in the college town around the wrong crowd. And I was probably part of the wrong crowd to someone else at that time. And it got dark to the point where I just I never felt suicidal, but I just felt like, man, this is like, I just can't continue. It was just depressed. The only time I felt good was when I was at the bar hanging out, but then it was always chasing something. And it just felt like I was on a treadmill, just miserable. And so finally, my wife came into my life, and that's kind of what straightened me up. That's a whole nother story. But I just got refocused and I got a purpose again besides partying,
So, Mike, let me ask you this, because a lot of times people go from that side of it. And when we have the type of personalities, and I hear it in you when you said, like, I'm not going to take any garbage. I feel that from you anyway, because when we were at Secret Knock and we were doing a mastermind, we had someone on stage, you pierced to their heart. I'm telling you, if you get a chance to work with C-Roc, he will ask you like 5 questions that'll change your life. Like literally, he'll get on the phone with you. And this happened to me in person. You were up on the 3rd level and someone was there and a lot of people were asking, revealing questions, whatever it was. And you went bam, bam, bam. And the person was just like, holy crap. Because if I answer these, I'm going to be held accountable to them. You're that type of guy. Now, when you're that type of guy, when you touch alcohol, then you're going to go all in. You're getting all the alcohol. When you go into smoking weed, you're going to smoke all the weed. You're going to do all the cocaine. You ain't doing just a little bit. So as you transition out of that, what I noticed with, and I say our personalities because that's my pop is very similar to that. We a lot of times replace it. So let's go into the part where did you replace that with work and then you went hard charging at work and that impacted the family? You were talking about that earlier. Can you kind of, and how do we break those cycles? Because it's a blessing that you have that type of personality and that type of drive, but how do we apply it in a positive way?
Well, I always talk about, so I don't know if I replaced it. I think I replaced it with my mission or, it was work at first. You're right. It was work. It was money. But I think, and then eventually I was doing the money game, and then I was realizing that I wasn't in alignment still. Something wasn't right. I wasn't fulfilled. But what changed everything for me was getting a mission, identifying the mission, and a positive, constructive mission. Because here's the thing, I'm a believer in God, and there's a talk about sin, the word sin. And to me, the word sin means that you're not going after your God-given potential and abilities, right? You're not creating. Anytime that you're not doing that and you're not taking your thoughts, words, actions, the environment you keep and going in the direction of what God intended for you. A lot of people think that, oh man, I can't do the God in the church thing, man. It's just goody. And they just want you to be good and not have any fun. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about, we're put here for a purpose. And if you're not identifying the purpose, number one, and then living into that purpose with your thoughts, words, actions, environment, you're sinning. And it's not conducive to thriving in life. That's all it is. It's not a goody two-shoe thing. It's not somebody wanting to take fun of. Now, there has been a mix-up in some churches and some people where they make it about that and they make it and use it for power and try to control you. But that's human beings messing it up. That's not God messing it up. So I've read the Bible back to forth, front, back. I've studied it. I've done other studies in other religions, then going back to the Bible again and made me understand the Bible even more. But number one, realizing that we have a purpose here and finding that purpose and then living that purpose and doing your darndest. We're human beings, we're not perfect, but you're doing your darndest to make decisions that lead towards the mission, building, constructive, creating versus destroying. And that was the game changer for me.
I want to give you a compliment because most of the time an alpha guy like yourself isn't going to talk the way that you were talking and isn't going to be vulnerable in that state, which I think is incredible, right? But I want to give you a compliment because I think it's what people say about you when you're not there is more important than what they say about you when you're there. And I was just talking with our buddy, Greg Reed. And I said, hey, I'm about to hop on a podcast with C-Roc. He said, man, solid guy. He said every single thing that he says, he actually does, and he follows through on everything, and he delivers at a high level. And he said one of the coolest things for him was that there was a time where he gave constructive criticism, and when he did, as opposed to you being alpha male and being like, yo, no, I got this, you listened and then applied and then rocket ship, right? And you added rocket fuel to yourself. How can a person that is an alpha that literally, there's nothing in this world, C-Roc, that you couldn't do. And I know that, you know that. But how do you stay humble enough to be able to listen to counsel and listen to people and apply it? It's one thing to listen, but it's another thing to apply it. And I want to compliment you on that, but how can a person foster that in their life?
All right. So when I say that I believe that sin is not going after your best version of yourself, what you're put here for, If I want that and I'm committed to that, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get to that. So I know that I can't stop learning. If somebody has been further along in the journey than me and they're a little bit more wise, I'll say wise rather than older than me, like old man Greg. But if they're more wise than me, or they've been taught something from someone else too, and I can gather that information to make myself better so that I can help more people, I mean, I'm going to do it. And I think alpha is not what we think alpha is. I think alpha is somebody that is on mission, that is in alignment, and that has God's backing. Now, look, I respect everybody's beliefs, guys, but I've seen too much and experienced too much not to believe in God. So, I mean, I won't argue with you, but I'll just tell you that if you have the power that all-powerful God has put power in us to cause and create, I think that's alpha. Running from that, denying that is and what most people would view as alpha, because I'm tough, I can do everything on my own and this and that. That's to me is kind of foolish.
So with that one, right? And I said it earlier, and that one, you can imagine a company that's called That One. It's self-explanatory. I want to give you mad props for that. It's incredible to hear it, and it's so simple, but it's so powerful. But you just said something about purpose, right? And this is where a lot of people get hung up. How can a person identify and then lock into their purpose? Because when they hear C-Roc and they're like, oh, he's on purpose, now he's not sinning because he's on purpose. Some people are thinking like, but man, that's a complicated thing. How do I find mine?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm human, so I sin. So just so everybody's clear, I have my moments. All right, and I try to do the best I can, and I don't even like to use the word try. I do the best I can, and I've gotten better and better and better as the years go on and the older I've gotten. But I still sin. I still don't. I still make decisions sometimes that don't take me in the direction I want to go. But I fix it and identify as fast as possible, and I'm quicker at that nowadays.
Okay.
As far as finding your purpose, I think the number one thing people should look at is like what lights you up and gets you excited. Like, what is that thing? Like, if you knew that you did that thing every day, what would it be? Like, really, what would it be? Now, I know people say sometimes that, like, if I could just find out what I love and do that for work, I would never have to work another day in my life. We still have to make money, guys. Like, you still have to make money. However, you can do your mission and have your mission and live through your mission by doing a job that makes money. So, for example, okay, I'll give you a story. I'm in the mortgage space. I just recently exited the mortgage space, which I never thought I'd ever do. And after 17 years, but I did it. I let go of the banana, or the, what does Greg talk about? The nut, the spider monkey story.
Yeah.
I was like that. I was holding on to the nut, and I let go recently. And I can't tell you, even though you know the story, you still hold on to the nut or the banana sometimes, and you just like, I'm not letting go. I know that story, but I'm not letting go. What if I let go? You have all these things running through your head. But I was in the mortgage space, and in that mortgage space for time, I was chasing money. Then I shifted that to, okay, now I'm going to get on mission, and I'm going to take this mortgage thing and apply my mission to the mortgage thing. And I have an identity now as C-Roc. Not that I'm a division manager in a mortgage company. That's not my identity anymore. I'm not doing that because that's not an identity. That's a vehicle. Okay. So I got my mission. What lit me up? What lights you up? What is that thing? Got my mission. And now I have vehicles that I can go into with my mission. So now I bring this brand, C-Roc brand. I build it up so it's known and celebritized. Opportunities start to come my way now that I can hand select and pick. And those are my vehicles to make money, to build money, to affect people. But I am C-Roc, okay? And C-Roc is my identity, which is not my body. It's a spirit. I'm a spiritual being, and I use this body. This is a vehicle, and then the other vehicles are the things I get into, whether it's the mortgage business, the agency, the podcasts, whatever I do. Those are vehicles that I drive around in this vehicle, and I realized that. So I forgot what your question was, but I hope I answered it.
No, it's incredible, man. I want to talk about the way that you've really taken podcasting to a completely different realm, because I remember when my wife and I in 2019, we were on a dog walk, and she said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, and I turned to her, and I didn't even blink, because I've been speaking, keynote speaking for about 30 years, and but I was doing it simultaneously with our business. And I turned to her and I said, I want to do a podcast and I want to speak. That's it. And she was like, how much money we got in the bank? And I had said, about this amount. She said, well, then let's go. And I didn't expect on a dog walk for her to say that, but I don't know if you've ever had this happen, C-Roc, but when I went to my in-laws and COVID happened and all this stuff, and then my in-laws were around like, oh, cool. So what are you going to do? And I was like, I just started a podcast. And every one of them was like, that's cute. And then they were pausing, and I knew what they were coming with. How are you going to make money with that? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know how I was going to make money with the other companies, but we sure built them. And I said, I think this one's going to be bigger. But talk to me about the power of podcasts, because I'm going to send this to my in-laws so they can. I'll
take care of this for you. I'll take care of this for you. So look, I was in the mortgage space in 2018. I felt this itch that, remember I was telling you about the cage that you're in. I felt like, man, I'm in a cage, but I feel like it's this power, this potential to just do great things, man. I can impact this planet. I feel like the best kept secret, but I just felt caged in. A lot of it was thoughts of other people, what other people thought of me. And I was taking that in as limitations, right? And I also the self-beliefs that I had created after failures, which shape your life. So eventually I started thinking to myself, you know what? I got to get known. And I read a book, The 10X Rule. And Grant in that book validated the fact that I was normal. I was normal wanting more. I was normal understanding that I had more inside of me. And the people around me that didn't get that wanted to be okay and mediocre, they were confused. It wasn't me. I wasn't confused. So that validated it. And once I got that and I validated that, I was on. And I said, you know what? I'm getting known. I'm getting known. And then I started asking questions like, and by the way, this is like a mind expansion exercise. Started asking myself questions. How big do I want to go? I'm in this local little town. I've been on magazines regionally, Metropolitan Magazine, Coastal Style Magazine, on the cover. I knew I had to get known like in my market when I was doing mortgages, real estate, but I was thinking too small and I was playing too small of a game. So I said, okay, let me think about this. Should I just get known in Maryland? Like maybe focus on all of Maryland to be the man in Maryland to do what I do. I said, well, that's a lot of work. I might as well, if I'm going to put that kind of work in, I might as well go nationwide. And then it kept going, global. And then I saw in the news, I was watching, and it showed these UFOs that these Navy pilots were running into, and Congress was even, the Pentagon was even validating that there was UFOs. And I'm like, well, man, if there's aliens, I got to get the aliens to know who I am and what I do and what my mission is. And once I did that, Kelly, all of a sudden my mind was just bigger. And it didn't matter what the people around me said. It didn't matter if they said, oh, you got a podcast. Who are you to have a podcast? Who are you to be a speaker? Who are you to do this? Who are you to do that? All that stuff didn't matter to me. I just kept storing all that in my fuel tank now. I need it. Give me some more of that. Give me some more of that. That's my rocket fuel, right? And I didn't keep it in my trunk where most people keep that stuff and weighs you down and slows you down. I was able to convert it into fuel, and it kept going further and further. And this dude, by the way, I didn't know how I was going to get known. I had no idea. I was just like, I'm going to get known. If other people did it, I can do it. Then this guy reached out to me, Chris Donaldson, and he said, hey, man, I'd love to have you come on my podcast. And I'm like, I don't even know what a podcast is, bro. I'm not coming on your podcast. What are you talking about? And he's like, no, you got to come on my podcast. I said, I don't have any equipment. I don't know. Like, what do I got to have? He's like, no, I got everything, or I'll give you a list of anything you need. Just come on my show. All right, I'll come on your show. Man, and I just saw that episode again. It was the first podcast I ever did back in 2019, not that long ago. And when I went on that show, he made me feel like a rock star. He interviewed me. I thought, man, this is the greatest thing in the world. Confidence went up. Then I was able to take it and push it out to places. Credibility went up. And I remember him or one other guy telling me, this podcasting thing, you keep doing this will change your life. And I didn't know what they meant by that. So all I needed to hear was that. And I was like, I'm leaning into this. So I told my assistant, get me on as many podcasts as we can, figure out like whatever we got to do. I'll talk to people. I'll do whatever we got to do. I need to do podcasts because I think there's something here. Then Gary Vee was doing his thing. And I know Gary Vee was talking about repurposing. And I didn't understand how they got so much content out. And all he did was have a guy following him around with a videographer, camera, or do podcasts, have people asking him questions, and then that's all they would push out there. If you notice Gary Vee, all he's really posting is him answering questions of people. And I'm like, well, this is the greatest thing in the world. I could just get interviewed over and over again. I have unlimited content, elevation through the roof, because people think that if you're getting interviewed, you're important, even if you're not. Even if you don't know what you're doing, if you're being interviewed, something's up. They got to pay attention. And I started thinking I got to do as many of these. So I started doing 7 to 10 shows a week on other people's shows. I started doing my own show at that time. And in the last 3.5 years, I'm approaching 500 of both, me being on other people's shows and me having my own show. And it's completely changed my life, to the point where my network is, I mean, I was backstage at a comedy show that I would used to have to sit in the back row at, and I wouldn't even be able to smell the guy on stage in his cologne or anything. Like, I'm hanging out and dapping up Mike Epps backstage. Like, I would have never had that opportunity hadn't it been for podcasting. And now I have an agency that helps entrepreneurs get on podcasts that are aligned with them, elevate their brand, and then help them monetize that attention. And I wouldn't be able to help all these people without it. So podcasting is the way. It is the going forward, it's still not even touched. There's going to be so much more to do with it, and you're on the right track, brother.
Well, and I want to give a shout out to my in-laws too, and I completely understand. I mean, it probably they were scared when their daughter was going to meet a guy who was in the professional beauty industry. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was a thing that was probably a fear too. So I want to big shout out to Nanny and Grandpa. He doesn't like to be called Grandpa, but I'll call him Grandpa. With this podcast thing and with the personal branding part, I want you to, because one of my buddies, his name is Nick. So Nick, big shout out to you. You know who you are, Nick Horgan, amazing guy. You need to meet him, C-Roc. But he was talking about, he's always built companies and he's always built those, but he's never really spent a lot of time on his personal brand. Can you talk to the fact of why it's so important to build that personal brand of you?
I think identity is a huge factor. Like, who do you identify as, and who you identify should be linked up with your brand. And then that should go out to touch people. Should really like make them feel the brand, like right here, and if you don't have that, then who do people identify with? Like, when they see you out there, if it's not clear what your brand is, like they're not attracted to you. Like, I want to be attractive, not good looking, like we're good looking fellas, you know what I mean? But not like that. I'm talking about attractive, like people cannot get enough of you. And when I started out, by the way, Kelly, when I started this, I'd have people reaching out to me saying, dude, I had a dream about you, and I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? Well, I was listening to your podcast and I couldn't stop. I was binging on your podcast and reading your book, this and that. I got, and I had started hearing this more and more and more and more. And I'm like, okay, something's working here. Then I have a clubhouse community now that I've built, and the same people show up. I do 2 rooms a day, brother, 8:30 a.m. Eastern and 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern on Clubhouse. And I know if I left Clubhouse, they would follow me wherever I went, because they keep showing up. These same people keep showing up every single day, 2 times a day, right? Because of the brand. And I'm very clear on what my brand stands for. I'm very clear on my core values. I share it with everybody and I live my core values. And so that draws them in, and that consistency is a big deal too, because when you're consistent, people pay attention. They'll start saying, like, I gotta know what's up with this guy. He's showing up all the time. He's showing up all the time. What is it? And that's part of the brand too. So brand is, obviously we see how much money corporations spend on their brand, and then rebranding at times when it's not working. Well, individually, when you establish a brand, you're going to find your tribe, and you're also going to you're going to have people self-select out away from you that don't vibe with your brand, which is just as important as drawing people in, is getting the wrong people away from you.
You just said a word that really strikes a nerve with me, which I believe is the power for every part of what it is that you do, which is that vibe. Because you could have all the techniques in the world or the greatest product in the world with the greatest price and the greatest deal. But if the person doesn't like your vibe, they won't buy from you. And I've seen this happen over time. How important is that? And how have you been able to construct, you talked about authentic brand, and people will say, like, they always say it, like, just be yourself. The hardest thing in the world for someone to do is to just be themselves. But and when I met you, I didn't know your brand. I didn't know what it is that you did. I knew there was a guy, but I could tell you the consistency of your brand and who you are, Mike, is on a different level. How can a person do that? And how important is vibe in this whole mix?
Well, I did a lot of work on myself, Kelly. I've spent, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands and hours working on myself. Because I'm committed. Like, I want to be the best at what I do, and I want people to be impacted by me. And in order to do that, I had to invest in myself and be willing to spend the time in myself. And so, if you don't love yourself, if you still have the hurt from your past on your sleeve, if you don't forgive people, if you don't love all people, it's very difficult to be authentic because you don't want people to see that side of you, right? But I love myself. I'm full of myself, not to the point where I'm cocky and conceited, but I'm full of myself in the fact that I know what I'm capable of. I love myself, and I forgive everybody that's ever hurt me because I know it wasn't about me when they were trying to hurt me. I know that it was about them. They were dealing with something. So there's two things I don't do now. I love all people, and I don't, two things I do. One, I love all people, and the other thing is I don't take things personally. You can never offend me. I made a decision. Once you make the decision, it's easy never to be offended. So I know that people are hurt. I know they're dealing with things. And so I can be myself because I love myself, and I'm clear with that. The other thing is I don't want people to have a string on me, like a control on me. And when you get offended by people, what they say, when you're in that mode, they have a string on you. They're controlling you. And I'm just not down with that. So I'm just authentic in the fact that I love myself, full of myself. By the way, full of yourself is better than being empty. So some people that have a problem with people saying they're full of themselves, better than being empty, baby.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like a person listening to you or even watching you, they see that vibe, like they see the vibe that you bring in, and it's like that you're okay. Like you're okay. And it's not saying that you're perfect, but that's what I got from you from the very beginning. I want to compliment you.
Thanks.
I know. I mean, number one, your time is so valuable. Anyone out there that's listening, you need to go to it's MikeC-Roc.com. Am I correct?
Yeah, or just on Instagram, Mikey C-R-O-C, Mikey C-R-O-C. Yeah,
okay.
That works.
And I would say, honestly, to be able to spend time with C-Roc is unbelievable. Like, I believe that there's not a person out there that if they got on a 5-minute call with you and you asked them 5 pointed questions and they really answered them, it would change their life. I watched it happen in person, and you are a master at this, C-Roc. It was unbelievable. So I started the podcast because of my kids, and it's Maddox and McKenna. Maddox is 11 years old, and he marches to the beat of his own drum. This kid he's an unbelievable little creature, and he's got so much joy in his heart. Like, we were on the way to football the other day, and he said, Dad, can you turn on Rocky? Because I gotta get hyped. And so we turn on the theme to Rocky, and he turns to me, he's like, this is the greatest song of all time. Then he gets out on the field and he's congratulating all the kids. If they drop a ball, he's saying no big deal. He's patting them on their back, and he's just lifting people up. This kid is a ball of joy. Then you got my daughter, who's the most sarcastic, funny human being that you can meet. She's 14 years old, and she gives her dad the business. I say to her in the morning, you're the greatest. And she's like, I know. And I said, I love you, baby. She says, who wouldn't? And then she slams the door and goes to school. I started the podcast because of those two. And I wanted to take iconic people like yourself that run in some of the most elite circles in the world and build people to get into those elite circles. And I wanted to show them that C-Roc is not a superhero. C-Roc is a human being that has flaws, but just has a crazy, amazing attitude and amazing work ethic that creates his vibe. What advice would you have for Maddox and McKenna? And if you could use both their names, it would be awesome, C-Roc.
Maddox and McKenna, guys, first of all, great job on being yourselves and leaning into it. I love that, man. Like, when I hear that, when you're telling a story, I just love it. I have 2 kids myself, and I love sharing stories about them and what they're into. So no, I love that. And, I think the most important thing is to get the clear on by the way, the mission can change, but get clear on the life that you want to live to the point where you're just writing a story every day. I take 5 to 10 minutes a day to write a story down. We're actually in the challenge right now with my community where we write the story down that we want. It's like a screenplay of the person we are right now, what we're doing, who we're doing it with, how, not even the how, we don't do the how, what we're doing, where we're doing it, why we're doing it, what we're doing, all that stuff. We write it down like we're writing a screenplay, just on one 8x11 paper. Once you're done that page, you're done. I would tell the kids to make sure that they're doing that every day, because there's a formula that I have that goes like this. What you set your intentions on, which by writing your story, now your intention is set. Your attention goes to. What your attention goes to validates that thing to your story. Like, oh yeah, that's what my story was about. Yeah, okay, I can see that. And once you have that validation, it becomes into existence in your universe. See, we're all living in this universe, this physical universe. However, we all have our own universe that we're shaping and experience it through. So it becomes our own little world, our own big world, however you want to look at it. It all happens from getting clear on what you want in your life, everything that you want with no limits. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Intention goes to attention. Attention goes to validation of the thing, to your story, and then finally existence in your universe that you're creating, and let them know that they have the power to create their own universe.
Wow. I tell you, C-Roc, it has been an absolute pleasure, man. I've been so excited. I wanted you on the podcast right away, but this guy's hard to get. So I'm so proud to be your friend and honored to be your friend. And I want to ask you in front of all the people too. I want to have you on again. So you have to say yes, because a bunch of people are in front. This is how I used to ask my mom if I could stay the night at my friend's house.
Yeah,
I'd ask him in front of the other. Yeah, I would do that as much as possible.
Yeah, let's roll.
But I just think
absolutely.
it's amazing. I think it's
Man.
incredible, man. And anyone out there listening, we're going to have all the links for C-Roc in the bio, and make sure that you check him out, because honestly, like it's a game changer. I witnessed you ask the questions of somebody else, and it was a game changer. I'm going to ask you too, because we do the Vibe Room. The Vibe Room is we did it in Orem, but I want you at one of the Vibe Rooms because I want to sit down with you. For those of you who haven't heard of the Vibe Room or haven't been, it's a live podcast. We got 3 to 4 guests that I do. It's unfiltered conversation, studio audience. It is absolutely unbelievable. But C-Roc, I'd love to be able to have you at one of the Vibe Rooms. This is where I want to finish. Is I want to ask you. I want you to just sit on this. You don't have to answer this right now, but in our men's group, what we found was there was a circle, and the circle was that when you fear God, then God will impart wisdom. That because the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. That wisdom will lead you to the knowledge of God. That knowledge will give you understanding. Understanding will give you insight. Insight will give you discretion. Discretion will give you discipline, and that discipline will lead you back to the fear of God as opposed to the fear of yourself. And so we test this all the time. Like with our guys, we're testing this. In the weeks to come, I want you to test that. And because the reason why we test it is because we want to see if it actually works. And every time that something's not working in my life, then it's always because my focus has got off of God, right? And God is like, come back to me, fear me, respect me. If you respect me, then I'll bring all the rest of this stuff. So that's where I wanted to end with, but I would love that challenge. And if you have things that apply to it in your life, I'd love to hear about it in the future and in future episodes too.
Sure, 100%, man. I'm down.
But I want to thank you, man, because you are absolutely phenomenal. We're gonna, like I said, we'll have all the links. Check out all the sponsors. Do the things that you know you need to do. And thank you so much for rocking with us. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, because my son thinks I'm cooler if I have more subs. So, C-Roc, you're absolutely phenomenal, man, and you're officially off the hot seat.